Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Safe Streets 2020 Champion Luncheon. Thank you all so much for joining us virtually today. I'm Rachel Young. I'm on the board of directors of Safe Streets, and I also work for M Agency. And I am here with the lovely Rachel O'Donnell, and we will be facilitating the event today. So I encourage you to use the chat. We won't be using the raise hand or Q&A feature. So if you have any technical challenges, please put them in the chat. Feel free to applaud and thank people, say hello to each other. Let's get that chat going. So without further ado, I don't know about you, but I could really use some inspiration. So I'm going to hand it off to Priscilla and we will get started.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the 2020 Safe Streets Champion Luncheon. I'm so grateful that every one of you could join us today. Thank you. I would like to start by acknowledging and thanking our honorary co-chairs, Greg and Barbara Tanbera, for your leadership and your support of Safe Streets. This has been a wonderful opportunity to work with you. And I must acknowledge that the Tanbera family is one of the pillars in our Pierce County community, consistently working for safety and health of all. Thank you so much for all you do. I also want to thank our first responders who during this time are dealing with so many difficulties, the pandemic, racial unrest in our community and across the nation, as well as the fires that have visited our state and devastated communities and homes. We love you and thank you for doing the work you do. I also want to take a moment to give a shout out to some elected officials that I know are here. If I've missed anybody, I certainly apologize in advance. First of all, our Pierce County Prosecutor, Mary Robnett, Mayor Victoria Woodards from the City of Tacoma, and Council members John Hines and Chris Beal, also from the City of Tacoma. Thank you for being here. I'd now like to thank our sponsors. We have Titus Will Automotive Group, Multicare Health Systems, Columbia Bank, and Commencement Bank, Greater Tacoma Community Foundation, Gordon Thomas Honeywell, Hewitt Zollers, Moss Adams, and Financial Insights, Johnson Stone Pagano, Pierce County Alliance, Molina Healthcare, and Heritage Bank. Your support of our community is so remarkable, and every one of you has been a long-standing supporter of Safe Streets. Thank you so much. Well, these are certainly challenging times that we are in. And so I appreciate you taking time out of your day today to spend time with us, to get a little inspiration, and hopefully you'll have something to carry back to your friends, your families, your coworkers, and your spiritual community. Also, thank you to all of you who have been loyal donors for many years and are with us today. We appreciate it. And we welcome all the new donors, all the new people who want to learn about Safe Streets. Thank you. Safe Streets is made up of a group of 15 very passionate staff people who are in service to over 800 grassroots leaders across Pierce County. We all work together to fulfill the mission to engage, unite, and inspire youth, neighbors, and businesses to build safe, healthy, and thriving communities. I believe in the power of community. That is why I do this work. And I know that is why staff come to Safe Streets. They're an incredible group. And we have a wonderful board of directors who are committed to the service of the mission of the agency. These challenging times of the global pandemic, racial unrest, and the exposure of health inequities in our community are daunting. I believe Safe Streets has a role in our community building processes. We are intentional about reaching out and engaging people to begin to think about how we can address inequities in education, inequities in the justice system, and how we can help each other to get through the pandemic. As we mobilize people to build communities, those neighbors, those youth will help to come up with solutions and offer their solutions to leaders and advocate for change that will eliminate the unnecessary suffering in our community. No small task, but we're up to it. And most of all, we are very committed to being accountable for our part in community building across Pierce County. We know and we believe that community engagement has a key ingredient, which is listening to the community. Our workers reach out and listen to youth and to neighbors, understanding their hopes, their fears, their dreams, their aspirations for a better life in their neighborhoods. Together, we come together with them and we help them to develop an agenda for change right there at their own community level. And those changes are going to be long lasting because that fierce commitment of those local folks is compelling, and they will keep watch to make sure that the change they work for is sustained. I believe we have the tenacity, the grit, and the commitment to meet these crises that we're in now. We will come out stronger. We've done it before. And I know that every one of us, you here today, and all the people out there in those 800 communities are working together to really bring together and create a sense of belonging, help people to come and share their ideas. I also believe that we will make a difference because every day I see youth and neighbors coming together and lifting each other up and helping each other to make change in their neighborhoods, their schools, and in the business areas. I see our youth leading change program. Here's this young woman, Makesha Consuelo. She's working with other young people to raise awareness about the importance of voting. We all know how important that is, especially this year. I see youth organizing to increase awareness of mental health services, to gather supplies for those experiencing homelessness, to prevent gun violence, and to come together to implement kindness campaigns to combat bullying in their schools. I see youth support one another and they learn about different careers. They learn about business that they could go into. They learn skills like empathy and teamwork and problem solving. And they learn about how racism and discrimination and bias exists in our community and start to think about what they can do about that. I see our youth lifting their voices for equity and justice. I see communities across the county coming together to empower their fellow neighbors and to foster connection among diverse groups of people, whether that is through community cleanups, creation of community gardens, providing food for those in need, or acting as a nexus for their community with information about housing and mortgage assistance or emergency preparedness. And I see all of you taking this time in this hour to come together to fill your bucket with some inspiration, but also to think about how you can support the community building that we're committed to. We believe our community building work we do is so strong because the grassroots leaders have learned how to organize and how to advocate for themselves. They are willing to come together and to bring their gifts, their inspiration, and their perspiration to be able to create positive change in their neighborhoods for the well-being of all. So with all that said, I would like to now introduce to you Dr. John Push-Gaines, a wonderful friend of ours. He's spent a lot of time with Safe Streets, and we appreciate you, Dr. Gaines. I would like to give a special shout out to Wigstrom Consulting for sponsoring this part of our program. Dr. John Push-Gaines is a professional speaker, author, leadership consultant, and mentorship expert. He is driven to give hope to others because his own story grew from hopelessness. John earned his nickname Push because he believes in the power of perseverance and teaches others to keep pushing through life's obstacles to become the best version of themselves. Dr. Gaines, thank you so much for being here with us this afternoon.
It's great to be here. I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much for the introduction. I love Safe Streets, and Priscilla, thank you for just leading during these trying times. And it's such an honor to be here with you all today. Just to share some words of encouragement and some words of inspiration. When I received the call to speak at Safe Streets, I said yes right away. And then I saw who was on the lineup and who else was speaking. And he didn't know I was going to do this, but I'll be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to a hero of mine, to a mentor of mine, Mr. Eric Boles. As we talked about this idea of champions, I remember one of the first times I was preparing a presentation in corporate America, and I was so nervous, and I remember just sweating trying to prepare this presentation, and I reached out to Eric. I said, Eric, and I think he was traveling. He may have been overseas at the time. I said, Eric, can I please just have 15 minutes? He said, yes, of course. And maybe, Eric, you don't remember this conversation, but you gave me some advice that literally shaped and changed my life. And really what happened in that moment was you instilled in me this idea of something I learned at an early age, that I was a champion and I was created for just a moment as such. And so, Mr. Boles, thank you so much for your influence. Thank you for being generous. Because what I want to talk about today is exactly the way that you lead your life and exactly the way that Safe Streets has been in our community. Safe Streets, the mission of Safe Streets is to unite, inspire neighbors, youth, and businesses to build safe, healthy, and thriving communities. And I truly believe I wouldn't be thriving as a person I am today if it were not for Safe Streets. Before I begin with some of the things I want to share and some of the inspiration I want to give, I would not be here today if it were not for my wife, my beautiful wife, and my baby girl, my 2-year-old daughter. I love them so much. They're the reason why I do everything I do, and they're the reason why I'm speaking today. They're the reason why I love to partner with organizations like Safe Streets, because in order for me to change the people around me, I first have to be able to look in the mirror and change myself, and then I have to be willing to have those conversations and inspire and change my family. My baby girl's so cute. When I come home, well, now I guess I'm working from home. And so she thinks that this little section of our living room is my office. And so she sits on my lap and she says, Daddy, are you working? I'm like, yeah, baby girl, I'm working. She said, can I work with you? No, you can't work with me right now. But then if I go outside and I come back in, I say hi to my wife. I say, hey, babe. And my baby girl, it's so funny because she doesn't call me dad. She doesn't even know my name is dad. She knows I'm her father, but she calls me babe. So when I walk into my house and I see my wife and I say, hey, babe, my baby girl runs up behind her mom and she says, hey, babe, she's just the cutest thing. I was on a walk with them the other day. Not a good idea because it's extremely smoky and it was kind of hard to breathe. And we were outside for maybe about 20 minutes and then we decided to head back home. But as I was outside, I was gathering my thoughts and I was thinking about some of the things and some of the ideas I wanted to share today. And one of those stories I want to share was a time that I almost died in a fire. I don't know about you, but it's sometimes like when you smell something, it triggers something from your childhood. And when I was outside and I smelled this heavy smoke, I thought about this time in my childhood when I was in a literal fire. I remember staying at my grandmother's house. You see, I was this young kid that faced a lot of adversity. I was this young kid that had to overcome a lot of obstacles. My father abandoned me. My mother passed away when I was young. And so I kind of bounced around. And for a season in my life, I was staying with my grandmother on 8th and Cushman in Tacoma, Washington. Here I was with my grandmother having so much fun. But what happens is my grandmother, she was really the protector of our family. And so we had a lot of relatives coming in and out. And at that time in the early 1990s, the Hilltop had some of the highest drug and crime rates in America. My grandmother had 7 kids. She lost 5 of those kids, including my mother, from alcohol and drug use before I was 10 years old. It was a hard time for our family. And I remember having relatives come in and out using drugs and selling drugs. And my sister and I, they set up these 2 mattresses in the living room where my sister and I used to sleep, and that was considered our room. And that was all we had. But I remember it just being such a good time. And my grandmother, she lived downstairs. She bought this duplex and she subdivided and she made it into a full home. And my sister and I, we lived in this living room and we would sleep and we would have fun, and people would come in and out throughout the night, but we got so used to it, we learned how to kind of sleep through it. But I remember one night, as I woke up in a firefighter's arms outside of my grandmother's house with tears in my eyes, my grandmother's house was on fire. We had a relative that was using some drugs and kind of got messy and caught the house on fire, and my sister and I almost lost our lives. The smoke passed us out and put us into a coma state. And once the firefighters revived me, I remember just waking up, I saw the fire and I remember crying. And as I was walking the other day, the smoke, the smell of it triggered that story. And as I thought about what I wanted to share today, this idea of fire. You see, that was a terrible time. As a young kid, I faced so much trauma. I faced so much adversity. But I remember surviving that fire, and I realized the importance of time. I realized that all we have is time. And I remember being fascinated with fire. And I remember looking up stories on fire. And I remember looking up the goodness of fire, because there's always good in the midst of pain. The pain isn't meant to last. The pain is only meant to lead you to the purpose. And so even at a young age, I understood that there was a purpose for that fire. And I remember reading about gold in the refining process. And literally gold has to go through this fire to remove impurities and unwanted elements. And so I don't know who I'm speaking to. I don't know who I'm encouraging, but maybe you're like me, and some of these last few months have been extremely difficult. And maybe before the pandemic, you were in a personal pandemic. And I just want to encourage you. Maybe you feel like you're in the midst of a fire. But we need the fire to remove the impurities. We need the fire to remove the unwanted elements. And I promise you, just like me as a young boy, as I realized I survived that fire, and I woke up with a new mentality, and I woke up with a new desire. I woke up with a new mindset, filled with joy. I want to encourage you, this fire will not last. This storm will not last. The unwanted things are being removed. The impurities are being removed. We are going to be made whole. We're going to be a new community, a better community. And so my goal today is to simply encourage you. And now on to the theme of today, of my last few minutes. As we talk about this idea of champion and being a champion and what that means, I'll never forget when I learned about that word champion. It was on the football field. I was a football player. My dream was to go to college and play football. And guess what? That dream came true. The dream was to win a championship on the football field in college. And I'll never forget my junior year. My team was terrible. We didn't win any games. We were 0-11. It was like the opposite of champion. But we got to my senior year and we started to win some games. And we got to the 3rd game of the season. I ended up getting hurt that game, but we were a really good team. And guess what? That team made it all the way to the championship game. And for that championship game, I was finally able to put on my pads and I suited up and I played a little bit in that game. And I remember scoring the game-winning touchdown in that game. And finally, my dream had come true to win a champion, to become a champion. And a champion is just this, someone that defeats all rivals in competition. And I want to use that word rival synonymous with obstacle. I want to use that word rival synonymous with adversity. And I want to encourage you, this community, we have a championship community because of the leadership, because of organizations like Safe Streets. But not just that, in order for us to become a champion and become and stay the champion that we were created to be and win championships every single day, we each individually have to look in the mirror and realize that we were created to be a champion. Because it took for me to win that championship on the football field to realize that I've been a champion my whole life, because I've been defeating rivals and obstacles and adversity my whole life. And these are three things that I learned from playing football. These are three things that I learned from my mentors. These are three things that I learned from people like Mr. Eric Boles. The first thing in closing, I want to close with this: growth doesn't just happen. In the midst of the pandemic, I want to encourage you, in order for us to grow as a community, we have to be able to grow on an individual level. But personal growth is not a natural process in most people's lives. But I want to encourage you, things don't just happen for no reason. They happen to teach us something. So I ask you, what is this season teaching you? What areas do you need to grow in? Because the better you grow, the better the people next to you grow. The better you grow, the better your family grows. The better you grow, the better this community grows. The better this community grows, the better the world grows. The second thing I learned from my mentors like Eric Boles and playing football, you have to give up to go up. What will it take for us as a community to get to the next level? Like, what will it take for us as a community to get to the next level? What do we have to give up? What are we willing to sacrifice? Like, let's learn that while we have the time in the midst of the pandemic, in the midst of racial tension. What are the things that we have to give up to become whole and to keep winning these championships as a community? I understand it's a bad chapter. I've had a lot of bad chapters in my life, but I realized that the bad chapter was not the book. Don't give up because of a bad chapter. Keep going, because the story does not end here. Yes, I agree. It is a terrible chapter, but this chapter will not last. And the last thing I learned from my mentors, and the last thing I learned from playing football and winning these championships on the football field, like, the better I grew myself, the better my teammates around me grew. Growing yourself enables others to grow around you. Growing yourself enables you to grow others around you. Like, we literally can't give what we do not have. So I ask you, like, what habits do you need to establish in the midst of this pandemic? What habits do you need to break? What hard conversations not do you need to have with others, but what hard conversations do you need to have with the person in the mirror? And then I want to encourage you to start filling your cup, because by filling your cup, you're growing yourself. And by filling your cup, we're then able to give what we have to others. So there's things that we ought to do every single day. Every single morning, I wake up and I have these affirmations and I pray with my family. I do affirmation statements with my family. And then I spend a little bit of time reading, and then I work out, because those are some of the most important things that I have to do in my own personal life in order for me to be the community member that I was created to be. In order for me to inspire the others around me, I first have to learn how to inspire myself. In order for me to change the others around me, I first have to be willing to have the hard conversations with myself and be able to change myself. I understand we're in some dark times right now: wildfires, pandemics, racial tensions. But in our darkest moments is when we come together. In our darkest moments is when change is happening. In our darkest moments is where we find our greatest strengths. With everything going on in the world right now, our current global situation, our current local situation, the good news is that this too shall pass. And the challenge for us is to learn how to inspire ourselves so that we can inspire others. Learn how to be a champion ourselves every single day so that we can champion others. So thank you, Safe Streets, for your time, and I hope that was inspiring for you.
Thank you so much, John. That was amazing. So next up, we have Eric Boles, and I'm going to start by thanking Tex and Carol Whitney for sponsoring this portion of the program. Longtime supporters of Safe Streets, thank you so much, Tex and Carol. So Eric is the CEO and founder of Game Changers, Inc. He is, which is a leadership training and development company headquartered in Lakewood, Washington. Eric is a noted global expert in talent development, change management, and cultural transformation. Eric serves on the governance board for the YMCA of Pierce and Kitsap counties and is a teaching pastor at Life Center of Tacoma. Prior to becoming a sought-after speaker and consultant, Eric learned many of his principles of peak performance, team dynamics, and leadership from his experience as a wide receiver with the National Football League's Green Bay Packers and New York Jets. He is also an author of a book titled Moving to Great, Unleashing Your Best in Life and Work. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here. Let me first of all say, I was up in here having some sensitive moments, tearing up because of Dr. John Gaines' message. I'm just so encouraged, so proud of him and the impact that he's having on so many, but also on me. It's so good to be with all of you right now. Safe Streets is dear to my heart. When I first came out of the league, when the NFL can stand for not for long. So after I spent my time in the league, when I came home and was looking for an opportunity and what was I going to do next, I remember having an interview, sitting down with Priscilla, and Priscilla welcoming me in and being able to be part of the community really early on, and almost everything actually transformed from there. And so I'm grateful to Priscilla. I'm grateful for Safe Streets. Also, I want to honor every leader who's here on this luncheon Zoom call today. The impact being on the front lines that Safe Streets have done for so many years. I am so grateful. They were playing this role even when my father was still alive, when he was still pastoring up on the hilltop. And Safe Streets has always been partnering so much and being on the front lines in the community. With that being said, what I want to do today as an encouragement to everyone who's listening is just continue on the message that John was sharing. But I want to do it in a little more specific way. I want to focus this on having to lead during these times of uncertainty, a level of resiliency that I believe we all need. But one of the things that's important to me, especially for my city, my county, living here in Pierce County, I want to make sure our mindset isn't just to survive what's been going on, but how do we figure out a way to thrive through it? How do we find opportunity in the midst of all this difficulty? How do we find hope when everything around us can sometimes look hopeless? I was once told, when you have hope for the future, it gives you power in the present. But in order to have hope for the future, and I'll tell you right now, I am a big believer in hope. But hope by itself isn't always the greatest strategy, right? And so sometimes we need to invest hope into a strategy, not just simply have hope. With that being said, here's what I'm asking, and here's my challenge to every single person in this room. We're all leaders. We're on the front line. What our city, what our county, what our community is going to look like has a lot to do with what we can see as we project ahead. It is times like now where leadership matters so much. But we have to have a vision of the future. We are just not impacted by what's currently existing. Recently, I actually was I spent some time actually right after the events that took place in Minneapolis. And I was actually out there. I have two clients who are very prominent in that community. The kind of conversations we had to have were real, they were authentic, they were vulnerable. Whole organization were doing it together. Community was involved, law enforcement was involved. It was an honor to be a part of it. But in that experience, it just reminded me how everything does rise and fall on leadership. Just how important it is for leaders to have a vision. And keep this in mind. I'm not saying that leaders have to have all the answers, but it is pretty powerful when a leader has a picture of what the future can actually look like. I like to say it this way. All of us have a certain level of fear of the unknown, fear of uncertainty. I was once told that people will choose unhappiness over uncertainty. That means people rather be unhappy and certain about it instead of taking a risk of going after what it is they really, really want. I believe right now, our leaders and all of us who are watching this and connecting together right now, part of our responsibility is to kind of help change this fear of the unknown in terms and changing that into, confidence in the future, fear the future, make it a confidence. But how do we do that? Do we just do it by being inspired? Do we do it by just being passionate? And so I want to leave you with a few practical things. I hope and pray that is relevant to everyone who's hearing this. But because my background's athletics and I've been so involved in sports, I appreciate being inspired. I appreciate being passionate. I love those messages. But I've also sat through a lot of locker room speeches. Okay? And I know if it's just too inspired, it's just a passion, we can go out in the second half and make the same mistakes faster with greater intensity. Okay, so that isn't always what we need. What we do need, though, is we need our leaders to not only be passionate, not only inspire us, but also be clear. And right now we're at a time where clarity is what we need. Why? Because there's so much distraction that's around. When John said what it meant to be a champion and how to become a champion, one of the phrases that always stuck with me was that champions are celebrated in the light, but they're made in the dark. Champions are made when no one's looking around. They make the tough calls, the tough decisions. And what makes that so significant is how important it is to be clear of what it is that we want. So I'm going to just cut 5 little things, all right? That's what I'm going to leave with you, 5 little things. And the first thing is this, okay? This is what's important. Every leader, and especially during times like this, we need to know, what does better look like? What does better look like? And we want to be as clear as possible, not vague, but clear. We always talk about vision all the time. And I will tell you, if I can't see ahead of me very clearly, I work hard to maintain what currently exists. And so sometimes we get angry with people who aren't willing to change, but sometimes people aren't willing to change because they haven't been given a better picture of what's possible. I always say, especially when it comes to going through change, I think John Wooden said it this way. He goes, failure's never fatal, but failing to change may be, okay? And so in order to make sure we don't have too many fatalities, those of us who have vision of what better can look like needs to be sharing it, needs to be communicating, needs to give us something that looks different than what currently exists. And when we know what that can look like, the next question we got to answer is, point number 2, is why is it important? Not only where we want to go or what we want to do, but why do we want to do it? Why is that essential? Now, I will tell you right now, this is why I love about what Safe Streets is all about. Safe Streets, its mission is very clear, but they're constantly sharing the message of why it's so important, why we have so many frontline community members who are making such a difference, why those 800 leaders are so important, why is it important for us to contribute? And the why is so important. It's what gives us power. It's what emotionally connects us to what's going on. Now, I'm grateful that Safe Streets is doing it. I'm grateful so many people are doing it. What I got to figure out is, how do I do it in the environment that I'm in as well? Not only what's important, it's important that I talk about why it's so important, why we get this done. Now, once we have the why conversation, now we can move on to how. So if the first thing is what, second thing is why, the third thing is, how are we going to do it? And now, anytime we talk about how we're going to do it, that's a kind of connected to the method. But I don't know about the rest of you, but there's been a lot of change and all kinds of things are going on. So the way we used to do things probably needs to change. Now, what we're trying to accomplish and why we're trying to accomplish it may not change at all. Actually, hopefully those are even stronger than ever before. But the method that we must use to get it done is going to have to change. We're living in a new reality. I first learned this, I was doing some work once with USAA Insurance, and their CEO at the time, his name was General Robles, and it was an amazing experience for me, but he shared something with me that I've used in so many different areas of my life, and he called it commander's intent. And what he said was, he says, Eric, here's when you want alignment, a lot of people agree there's a problem. The challenge is not everybody gets aligned around the problem. And real clarity and alignment requires you to cover these things and the very things I'm mentioning now. He says, we got to be aligned around what we're trying to get done. We need to be aligned about why we're trying to do it. But the third thing is we also got to be aligned about how we're going to do it, yet how we're going to do it must remain flexible. Now, I looked at him sideways and I was like, General, why does we have to be flexible on the how? I mean, if we're going to do it this way, we got to stick to it and not adjust to the right. He's like, no, it's not that simple. I said, why is that? He goes, because we call it commander's intent, because we can be clear on the what, we can be aligned on the why, but guess what? When it comes to the how, I said, yeah, he says, others get a vote. The enemy gets a vote. In our environment, the marketplace gets a vote. The environment gets a vote. Real life hit ship, real life gets a vote. All kinds of different things have an influence on the method we use. But if we're already clear about what we're trying to do and why we're trying to do it, when the how kicks in, now we have an opportunity to find new ways to accomplish the same thing. Now, after we all align on that, the last two is number 4, is we need to really talk about what are all the benefits that we're going to receive. All the, not only the initial consequences from a positive standpoint, but what are all the additional positive outcomes that are a result of us getting done what needs to be done. When Priscilla showed those pictures of the young folks, having these kindness campaigns, I mean, what a great principle. I'm sitting there going, everything that Safe Streets has been about, look how it's, multiplied, reproduced itself in so many different lives. And I can't believe it was over 20-some years ago that I was there with Safe Streets. And I'm seeing it now and like the difference it's having. There are so many benefits when the community aligns around what we're trying to do, why we're trying to do it, and have a multiple form of methods to get it done. But we also get to sit back and look at all the benefits. And that is what it's all about. But this last one, and this is the one I really want to hit home, is the 5th part of achieving clarity of vision, being aligned on a goal, how teams actually become championship teams, not winning just a game, but actually how they win a dynasty. And that is being clear about this 5th point, and that is the cost of inaction. Being very honest about what happens if we don't do what we're set out to do. What would it cost us? How will it impact us? That is a critical thing for us to evaluate. This is why we're, and I have no problem asking for it. Like people say, Eric, do you ever have a problem asking for money or do I? Not at all, especially when its purpose is so significant. Man, there's a lot of places money can go. But where can money go that has the most tremendous impact? And when you want to increase performance, increase the purpose. And the purpose of Safe Streets, the purpose of what all of us are doing is so significant to this community, I can't help but want to give because the cost of inaction is significant. And so what I hope when we think about clarity, when we actually have conversation about the cost of inaction, it creates an urgency. They say, I've said it before, when you have hope for the future, it gives you power in the present. And fortunately, our hope for the future of Pierce County isn't in vain. We have places where we can invest that hope into because we got great plans, great strategies, great leaders. I'm honored to be a byproduct or a product of Tacoma, Washington. I'm honored to be a member of Pierce County, but I'm even more honored just to be a part of this, knowing that, things are happening. Why are we a championship county? Is because, like I said before, we are going to be celebrated in the light. But the reason we're going to be celebrated in the light is because of all the things we're doing in the dark, where no one's looking. These little grassroots efforts that are changing communities one at a time. So with that being said, I want to thank you for having me. I've said all the time, my father was a longtime Baptist preacher. But I've always told him what made him effective, he never spoke too long. So I want to make sure I follow that same model. So thank you all so much for having me. God bless you and please give. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, John. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you so much for coming. We appreciate you and have a wonderful afternoon.